Well, good morning, and thank you all for being here. It's a very exciting moment for the California Department of Justice. We are here to announce a new division of the California Department of Justice, which we have named the Bureau of Children's Justice. And joining me this morning are leaders, statewide leaders, national leaders, in terms of advocacy and attention to the needs of the children of California. And so you're going to hear from them. They are Tom Saines, who's the president and general counsel of MALDEF, Jennifer Perry, who's the executive director of the Children's Action Network. We have Alex Johnson, who is the executive director of the Children's Defense Fund, and we have Ryan Smith, who's the executive director of Education Trust West. I'd also like to thank SEIU 721 for being here and for all the work they do for the working men and women of Los Angeles County. Many of you have heard me say and talk about what I believe we need to do with criminal justice policy, and in particular that we need to be smart on crime. That when it comes to criminal justice policy, for too long we've accepted a false choice which suggests that one is either soft on crime or tough on crime, instead of asking, are we smart on crime? And in particular, I believe that that approach requires that we adopt everything that medical health professionals have taught us with the public health model. If we are to confront and actually adequately and appropriately deal with an epidemic, health epidemic, crime epidemic, the smartest way is to deal with prevention first. And that means prioritizing prevention. It means putting our resources into prevention, understanding that will be the most effective approach to ending the epidemic. If we are a little late and the sniffles take on, well then let's get into early intervention. But if we are in pure reactive mode, in the emergency room or in the prison system, we're far too late, it's too expensive, and we will not be effective. So the Bureau of Children's Justice is very much designed with that approach in mind, which is to focus on the needs of California's children, and in particular the children in California who are most at risk. We will do an incredible amount of work to save taxpayers money, to have an efficient system that produces children who will contribute to the workforce, contribute to our economy, and contribute to a better quality of life for all Californians. So what is the Bureau of Children's Justice? In particular, its mission is to protect the rights of children, improve accountability of government. I'm going to say that again because it's very important. Improve accountability of government, and focus attention and resources of law enforcement and policymakers on the importance of helping every child reach his or her potential. The Bureau will use the criminal and civil law enforcement powers of the California Department of Justice, and we will specifically hold accountable private, charitable, and public institutions that fail and or prey on our children. We will work with state and local governments and national stakeholders to enhance support for vulnerable children. And we will identify and pursue needed improvements to policies that impact our most vulnerable children. As California's top law enforcement officer, I am charged with the responsibility of protecting all Californians, which includes our children. I also have the responsibility of protecting the consumers of California. Part of the motivation and design of this Bureau recognizes that children are consumers also. We often think of consumers as the person who writes the check or can negotiate a contract or has a credit card. But that's wrong. Consumers are anyone who is actually receiving or consuming services or goods. And what we know is that the children of California, and in particular our most neediest children, are consumers of a large amount of goods and services. So let's make sure that they are receiving the benefit of the bargain. Let's make sure, like any consumer, they are receiving a good product, a healthy product. Let's make sure that the marketing of that product holds true to its promise. And when there is a false representation, when there is fraud in the representation, that there will be accountability and consequence, just like any fraud case involving any other consumer. So specifically, we are looking at it also from the perspective that 1 out of 4 Californians is under the age of 18. That's 9.3 million Californians who are under the age of 18. And every day they are consuming both public and private goods and services. Let's look at what we have in terms of then gaps in our system and what we need to do in terms of increasing enforcement. And I'll start then with a critical examination of the foster care system in California. It's broken. It is broken. A child becomes a member of the foster care system in California because they are the subject of abuse or neglect. That's how they get there. So by definition, any child who is in our foster care system is known by us as a system to need support, to need nurturing, to need attention, to help them get back on track, to help them be as productive as we know they are capable of being. And children who, by the way, found themselves in circumstances that were not of their own making. Government has a clear responsibility for treating these children with the highest priority, and we are falling short, as evidenced by the following facts. California's foster care children have a high school graduation of 58%, compared to 84% for all other students. Only 50% of California's foster care system passed the exit exam in grade 10. In human trafficking, something my office has been working on a great deal, we have found that one of the people who are trafficked in California, 72% were born right here in the United States. But two, as it relates specifically to this bureau, over 50% of the commercially sexually exploited children in California are involved in the foster care system. In terms of racial disparities, which cannot be overlooked, African American children in California are 4 times more likely than white or Latino children to be in foster care. So one of this Bureau's first order of business is to look at enforcement gaps in the foster care system in California and ensure that government agencies are held accountable to their mission and to their purpose and to our expectation of what they will do to protect our most vulnerable children. To that end, I've sent a letter today to the counties of California, this letter which you all should have a copy of, and basically telling them the law. California foster children have legal rights under the Education and Welfare and Institutions Code, including the right to live in a safe, healthy, and comfortable home. They have the right, under the law, to be free from abuse. They have the right, legally, to have access to the same educational resources, services, and activities as any other student. It is critical that state, county, and local agencies guarantee these rights and follow the law. And in particular, follow the law by fulfilling their obligations to meet the health and safety standards that we have outlined, to investigate and report child abuse, to ensure equal access to education, and protect against discrimination. So in sending this letter to county officials, we are, one, giving them notice of the creation of this bureau and offering them assistance to complete their job and to fulfill their purpose. We also are looking in this bureau at what we need to do to address some very specific issues that have confronted foster youth and have come to our attention as we have built up this bureau over the last few years. And this has been in the making for several years now, and we're finally able to unveil it after doing all of the due diligence that it required. And so one of the areas that we figured out is a big concern for our foster youth, and it was surprising but not really shocking. There's a lot of identity theft that's happening of foster youth, because remember, these children come with money, and there are predators who will take advantage of their vulnerable state. They'll take advantage of the fact that these children are also transient. Most foster youth in California will change a home at least once a year, more likely twice or more. And each time they move, they carry with them a promise of money, and they carry with them and then share with wherever they are personal identifying information, their social security numbers, other personal identifying information, which we have seen anecdotally results in a great amount of fraud. And in particular, because of stolen and misused identity information that is either lost or stolen, frankly, that the perpetrator uses to make money off of these children. So we will leverage on that issue specifically the work of our e-crime unit, which we created several years ago, with the Bureau to do the work of dealing specifically with this one issue, which is identity theft with our foster youth. Another specific area that we are working on is the issue of childhood trauma, and looking specifically at how that impacts our foster youth. So you'll see the middle poster, I believe it's over here. 1 in 6 Californians, is that over there? Yeah, yes, there it is, right there, the blue one. 1 in 6 Californians has experienced an adverse childhood experience, and that's a term of art. It's called ACE, adverse childhood experience, such as abuse, neglect, or violence in the home. And it is strongly linked, and the fact of an ACE factor is strongly linked then to serious health issues that impact the child in childhood and will carry on with that individual through adulthood if not addressed. And so the outcome is this: children experiencing ACEs are 12 times more likely to attempt suicide, 10 times more likely to inject drugs, 7 times more likely to be an alcoholic. A Californian with 4 or more ACEs factors is 13 times as likely to have been removed from the home as a child as when compared to a person with no ACE factors. These are very real statistics that don't require us to be very creative about figuring out what these children need and also what we can do to help them. So we are partnering with the United States Department of Justice, and part of the announcement today is to share with you that last July, the California Department of Justice was chosen as one of 3 states in the United States to partner with the United States Department of Justice on their Defending Childhood initiative. This initiative will help ensure that California children exposed to trauma, whether they be at school or anywhere else, but that when they have been exposed to trauma, they will be ensured that they will be screened at school, at their pediatrician's office, or wherever they enter the child welfare or juvenile justice system, but that they will be screened and so that we can have a diagnosis, which all too often we do not have, so that there can be treatment. This is about recognizing the fact that a child who has been exposed to trauma, and let's be clear about what that means. It can mean that that 7-year-old goes to sleep every night hearing gunfire, or that they live in a home where there is domestic violence, or the combination and other factors. Do we really expect that that child is going to be able to go to school the next day and sit down and learn? It's very unlikely. And the thing that we know about childhood trauma is that it is very much what we think about when we talk about PTSD. It is not just merely something that might be about psychologically what we need to do to address. It is physiological as well, and it manifests itself in a physiological way. Without serious intervention, again, back to the public health model, without serious intervention and early intervention, we will pay the price for this known entity, which is the high prevalence of trauma among children in our foster care system. So the Defending Childhood initiative is very important. Our Bureau of Children's Justice is outlined and already entered agreements with 10 agencies to begin doing the work that will be a model for the country. Another area of focus for us, for our foster youth in particular, is education. We simply cannot address children's justice without taking a serious look at our education system. You know, we've recently celebrated everything from the Voting Rights Act to the Civil Rights Act. We're celebrating Black History Month. We're celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King in that movie Selma. We're talking about justice. One of the very, very important factors to determining and measuring whether we actually have achieved justice is whether we have equal access to education. And not meaning we can all walk through the school door, but are we actually being educated? And in particular, are our children actually being educated? And so, in particular, this Bureau is going to look at that issue and look at it with certain thoughts in mind. One, the racial disparities that exist in California in terms of high school graduation rates. Even though California's high school graduation rates are right now at an all-time high, Latino and African American students still lag behind their peers in shocking numbers. Asian American children in California graduate at 92%. White children graduate in California at 88%. Latino at 75%, African American at 68%. We've got a lot of work to do. And this Bureau will be looking at that issue and these disparities both through the lens of our Civil Rights Division and the work that we can do to support the best practices and best models of how we are going to change those outcomes. We're looking at the issue of elementary school truancy. We've been talking about that for quite some time. This is part of our education focus. We know and we have seen the link between high school graduation rates and elementary school truancy. You'll see in this poster here to my left, only 17% of chronically absent kindergartners and first graders in California are able to read proficiently by third grade. Students who do not read proficiently by third grade are 4 times likely to drop out of high school. 82% of the prisoners in the United States are high school dropouts. Of African American men between the age of 30 and 34, if he is a high school dropout, he is 2/3 likely to be in jail, have been incarcerated, or dead. There could not be a more clear source of evidence of the direct link between public education and public safety. This is something this Bureau will continue to look at, as the Department of Justice has been doing over the last few years. And in particular, we will work with local school districts to improve the programs that are directed at improving attendance, in particular among elementary school students, and do the work of highlighting those best practices for the rest of the state. And to that end, I'm also very pleased and excited to announce a new partnership between the University of California, Santa Barbara, the California Department of Justice, and the Stewart Foundation. We've been working with them for some time to reach this moment where we are going to set up a system that basically we're going to design together pilots which will measure outcomes and export successful initiatives to the rest of the state for replication. This is an exciting moment, and it highlights also the reason why these great folks are here, and I'm about to pass the mic in a moment. But we can't do this alone, and collaboration is essential between government and these entities that actually have the resources and the skills to be able to help us do our job. And finally, on the issue of foster youth and specific areas of focus, there is the issue of racial profiling and surveillance by school districts. So my office has heard troubling reports of parents of color, low-income parents, and immigrant parents who have been disproportionately targeted for enforcement of school residency laws, known as zip code education laws. It's a very real issue that impacts some of the most voiceless parents who are California parents. And it is time, and we have a need to seriously address it and find out what's going on. We've been hearing these stories as we've been building up and preparing to stand up this unit, and we intend to have it be one of the many areas of focus, and in particular with a purpose of protecting students' privacy and ensuring equal access to education by monitoring this and other issues in school districts. So in closing, the Bureau will build on the work that my office has been doing. Part of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years to build it up has been an internal survey and analysis of the various areas of my office where we have been doing work affecting children. The intention of creating this bureau is to bring it in one place, to develop the best skills and practices around what we can do to protect California's children, and to do it in a way that institutionalizes a very important point. Our children matter. And if we are truly going to live up to the ideals of our state, we can't marginalize issues that impact children. You know, so often we say, oh, well, you know, if you care about cute, cuddly things, you care about children. That's not it at all. The reality is, if we deal with the issues that impact children, we will, in a very smart way, deal with all the issues that we otherwise call big issues. And that's what this Bureau is designed to do, address the big issues by prioritizing our children. So thank you, and I'm now going to pass the mic over to Tom Saines, who is a great leader across our state and country.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Saines. I'm President and General Counsel of MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, a national civil rights organization whose mission is to promote the civil rights of all Latinos living in the United States. And I'm very pleased to be here at this historic announcement. The announcement will obviously have a tremendous impact on the Latino community in California. While Latinos make up 38% of the total population of the state, they comprise a majority of the children living in California. And that's because the Latino population skews younger than other populations, meaning that the proportion that is Latino gets higher and higher as you look at younger and younger cohorts. So a priority, a focus on children in California will have a tremendous and powerful impact on the Latino community here. There is no question but that the state of California, through the efforts of its residents and the vision of its leaders, has made great strides in recent decades in changing the atmosphere for children in California. I cite two things. We have made great strides in immigrant integration. We are a different state than we were 20 years ago, so critically important for those many, many children who are immigrants themselves or whose parents are immigrants to this country. Second, we have now introduced in this state weighted student funding in our education system with the promise of ensuring that many of the disparities that we continue to see can be rooted out by the efforts of local school districts across the state. But despite that progress, we still know that there are challenges for our children. One of the most regrettable stories coming out of California in 2014 was in the almost absurd overreaction of some local residents, joined regrettably by elected leaders in those localities, to the potential presence of unaccompanied minors from Central America. And what those folks forgot in their zeal to make a political point was that they were confronting frightened children. And we need to address those issues to make sure that as adults debate policies, as adults make determinations about what is best for this state, that we always keep in front of mind that children are most important for the future ability of this state to thrive, all children. The step being announced today, ensuring that there is a bureau dedicated to focusing on children, is one that will yield tremendous benefits, not only for the children who are affected, not only for their parents, but for the entire state of California. The problems that have been cited by the Attorney General have long-term impacts. When we fail to protect the rights of children, we ensure decades-long ramifications of that failure. The step announced today is an important one to ensure that we have a focus on kids and that in this state we will protect the rights of children, we will promote the futures of children, and we will secure a thriving future for California. Congratulations, Attorney General. Thank you for taking this step for the entire state of California. More importantly, congratulations to the state for ensuring our future.
And next, Jennifer Perry, the Executive Director of the Children's Action Network.
Thank you. I come today wearing 3 hats. One, as the Executive Director of Children's Action Network, which works to raise awareness about children in foster care and improve their outcomes. 2, as part of a coalition leading Foster More, of which the Stewart Foundation is a partner. And the purpose of Foster More is to bring foster children out of the shadows, show people their potential, and drive the much-needed resources toward those kids to realize that potential. So what you're doing with Stewart and across the board is really welcome in those efforts. And the third is I'm on the board of the Children's Law Center, which represents all of the children in care in both Los Angeles and Sacramento. So I think I can speak on behalf of all 3 entities and thank the Attorney General for recognizing how vital it is to work across disciplines and to bring in other parties to address what's going on in our child welfare system today. The recognition that you have to treat the child as a whole child and look at all the forces coming upon them and bring the forces to bear on that is so crucial in making a difference for these kids. And California is home to the largest foster care population in the country, so we can serve as a model, and what the Attorney General is doing is certainly doing that. A model in terms of focusing our efforts and changing the outcomes for these kids in care. And I also really would like to applaud the Attorney General for recognizing that these children are victims. I think sometimes we forget that the children are the victims. In foster care in particular, they come out of a dysfunctional family, and then sometimes we lead them right to a dysfunctional parent, the state. And that is something we need to change. Absolutely. We need to look at the way that the foster care system is treating these kids and make sure that it is looking to strive for better outcomes for them. And I think this effort will have a huge impact on that. And another part of what the Attorney General recognizes that children, you can only protect children when you have advocates for them that are actually enforcing the laws that protect them. And that's part of the work that Children's Law Center does, and I think it's part of the work this new Bureau is going to do. So it's vital to remember that the children themselves need those advocates, because everything we do otherwise falls short. And then finally, one of the things I learned from some of the youth I work with in foster care is so often when a child in foster care encounters someone in law enforcement, an attorney, a social worker, and they're in a precarious situation, that person says, "What are you doing here?" And what they should be asking is, "Why are you here?" And I think this Bureau and the Attorney General really recognize that. You want to know, why is a child of 13 on the street turning tricks? Why are you here? Not what are you doing here, but why are you here? Because when you ask why, you can bring the resources to bear on changing the future for that child. And there's that applies across the board to so many things she's working on today. And one of my favorite statistics, well, not favorite, but I think meaningful statistics about kids in foster care is 3% of them go on to complete a secondary college or vocational education. 70% of them want to. We should be asking why. Why aren't we helping those kids reach their aspirations? So I commend the Attorney General for already knowing the why, and today making a huge step forward and looking at the how. How are we going to realize the futures of these youth? How are we going to work together to make sure that all of them have the future that they deserve? So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And next we have Alex Johnson, who is the Executive Director of the Children's Defense Fund.
Thank you to the Attorney General. I want to recognize her for understanding that the investment in children is our most important investment. The protection of our most vulnerable population, our children and youth, is at the forefront of the mission of this Bureau. And it's also the mission of the Children's Defense Fund California, which I am privileged to lead as Executive Director. Our mission is to ensure that the playing field for children is level. And we do that by ensuring that there is equity, that there is justice, and that there is accountability. That's what this Bureau is about. And that's why I stand here today alongside the Attorney General, my colleagues in the nonprofit world, advocating for children, recognizing that children are our most important investment. We ought to ensure that children have a healthy start, a head start, a fair start, a safe start, and indeed a moral start in life. That is the essence of this Bureau, ensuring that children have those vital necessities that they need to succeed in the long term of life. This Bureau will help ensure that many more California children will receive the protection and the support that they need to meet their full potential to succeed in school and to succeed in life. It offers a great opportunity to address the root causes of the cradle-to-prison pipeline, where the intersection of poverty and of race put a black boy born in 2001 at a 1 in 3 lifetime risk of going to prison. A 1 in 3 lifetime risk, and a Latino boy at a 1 in 6 lifetime risk of having the same fate. That is what we are seeking to address with this new Bureau of Children's Justice. We know that we need to invest in children, in their prevention, to ensure that we're diverting youth from entering the juvenile justice system. And one of the focus areas of this Bureau will be truancy in California. We look forward as the Children's Defense Fund to the opportunity to work together to make sure that our children, especially those who are most vulnerable in our schools, that have a pathway out of poverty, a pathway that starts with education, a pathway that starts with ensuring that they are in school, in their seats each and every day. And that is what the Attorney General is working on. Poverty, according to one of the Attorney General's most recent reports, is a significant cause of truancy in this state, and we must provide additional supports to children to allow them to face the challenges that they are facing in their schools. And I'm also pleased that, as the Attorney General said, this Bureau will be addressing the issue of childhood trauma. It is one of the most important issues that has often gone unaddressed in our society. We know that trauma or chronic adversity, ACEs, as the Attorney General spoke of, early on in life impairs a child's ability to succeed later on in life. It impairs their brain development. It has rippling effects throughout their lives. Children of color are more likely to experience trauma than chronic exposure to violence and inheriting the impacts of generational and community oppression. And so as I close, let me simply again thank and commend the Attorney General and this office for its leadership in investing in children and recognizing that our moral authority as adults must require us to place children at the forefront. And so I thank the Attorney General for her leadership. Thank you.
And then finally, Ryan Smith, the Executive Director of the Education Trust West.
Hi, my name is Ryan Smith, and as the Attorney General said, I'm the Executive Director of Education Trust West, which is a California-based research, advocacy, and policy organization dedicated to closing achievement opportunity gaps within this generation. This month, we commemorate many leaders who've gone before us who fought for disenfranchised communities, fought for civil rights, and fought for the greater good. And today we can mark another historic moment where we see one of our tireless leaders fighting for the rights of youth. It's important that we know the facts. And when we talk about young black boys and young Latino boys, we know the statistics that almost every single black and Latino boy is overrepresented in all indicators connected to failure and overrepresented in every indicator connected to failure and underrepresented in every indicator connected to success. We know that 9 out of 10 of our students in elementary schools are impoverished, live in poverty. We know that only 42% of our foster care youth will not graduate from high school in the state. Today is a call for all of our communities to put students first, to put children first. And I think this Bureau is going to do an amazing job of ensuring that the rights of children are not only at the forefront, but at the pedestal of the work that we do going forward. I commend the Attorney General. She's building on her track record of helping students no longer go through truancy, to supporting schools across the state, ensuring that students have the right to get an equal education. And today, going forward, it's up to all of us to work with the Attorney General to make sure that every child has the right to succeed. So on behalf of Education Trust West, and excited to partner with my colleagues to make sure that this Bureau of Children's Justice does something really amazing in the state, and we commend the Attorney General for her leadership. Thank you.